have sacked Tom Cleverley. As always, I'm joined by the Vladimir Ivic to my Tom Cleverley. It's Justin Peach.
Good day to you, Ryan.
And yeah, wow, didn't expect this to happen so soon after the end of the season. Boy, oh boy, not only have Watford cocked up probably their own future, they've also cocked up our plans because we had a nice little sequence going of the team of the season for the second tier, and then we had the second tier award straight afterwards. How bloody dare they? But let me first of all, just before we get our reactions to this news, let me just read out the statement which has been put out by Watford literally just 2 hours ago. Watford have confirmed the departure of Tom Cleverley as head coach. They go on to say at one stage the Golden Boys were part of the playoff picture, but unfortunately performances and results drifted after just 5 wins in 2025. Bit of context is needed there. Sporting director Gianluca Nani said, "We thank Tom for his service, not just in his role as head coach, but for everything he has given Watford as a player and member of staff. But the time has come for a change and to build on what we believe is a young and talented squad that will have benefited from the experience of the Championship this season." Justin Peach, thoughts?
It's hard not to become enraged by the lack of sentiment and self-reflection within that statement from the club on a manager who has way overachieved this season. Obviously, for context, Tom Cleverley wasn't backed. He wasn't back this season. So for the club to essentially almost diminish his achievements of finishing mid-table, I think is really, really disappointing. And yeah, it is a young squad, but it's a young squad that's been nurtured by a very talented manager who's done a very, very effective job of essentially not allowing that football club to plunge into a relegation fight. That is a major achievement this season. And that's unfortunately, that's down to the ownership, that's down to the sporting director, Gianluca Nani, and their lack of direction at the football club. And what we've got now is even less direction at the football club.
Yeah, don't disagree with any of that, Justin. I think this decision is disgraceful. I think the statement which I've just read out is embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassing. Because what Tom Cleverley has done this season is remarkable. At the start of the season, us, many other people who cover the Championship, were expecting Watford to be at least fighting relegation. Some were even predicting them to go down like we were. And the reason for that was because there hasn't been much money spent on this squad. A lot of the players who have come in are free transfers. A lot of them are young lads. A lot of them are players past their prime. And the reason why there's been so little money spent on this squad is because the owners, the Pozzos, seem to be not that interested in Watford anymore. It's been something which has been steadily decreasing over the years, but has really, really become very apparent in the past 12 months or so. So it looked like Watford were in for a rough season. And what Tom Cleverley has done is have them fighting in the top half of the table throughout the entire campaign, pretty much. They've finished 14th. That's their lowest position they've been in all season long. At no point have they even been in danger of going down. And that is all down to the hard work that Tom Cleverley has done. So for them to come out and say this, say that Tom Cleverley has essentially underachieved this season because he didn't manage to maintain a playoff push, is one of the most disgraceful, disgusting statements I think I've ever seen a club put out about a manager sacking. It's revolting, Justin.
Yeah, they're really strong words, aren't they? It's narrow-minded and it's short-sighted with zero understanding of the circumstances you've put your manager in. And that's what I mean. The lack of self-reflection there is bizarre. It really is bizarre. I mean, there's no owner who's going to admit that they're not putting enough money into a football club. But Tom Cleverley, on many occasions, was almost predicting more signings to come at times. You go back to last August, he said, more signings are coming, and they never came. And that's not down to him. It's down to the people obviously running the club and running the recruitment behind the scenes. They never backed Tom Cleverley up with things that he was clearly expecting. So as I say, what Tom Cleverley has actually achieved this season is ridiculous. He's had Kumbeo as his main striker for the majority of the season, and they didn't fall into a relegation battle. Ryan, come on, like what he's done is just. I think is a really good achievement. And again, when you talk about manager of the season contention, as we have done this week, Tom Cleverley deserves to be in the conversation. I mean, form since Boxing Day hasn't been great, but the club needed to spend in January, or at least recruit in January, and he didn't. He
Yeah.
didn't, and that's the
Yeah.
problem. That is the
Yeah.
problem, Ryan.
Yeah, it is. And if you are watching on YouTube live right now, hello. And then please leave us a comment and get involved in the conversation. We'll read out some of the comments as we go along. We've got a comment here from that boy George, who I presume is a Watford fan, saying we're going down next season. Yeah, many people thought it would happen this season, but because of Tom Cleverley, that's not happened. But the thing is, and this just goes to show what Watford are like under the Potsos. It's not a surprise that this has happened, is it, Justin? Because we all know what the Potsos are like. I think Tom Cleverley is actually the manager who's lasted the longest in the job for many years. I think he's the first one. I don't know when it was in several years to have lasted an entire season. But now, right at the end, they've cut him off. And we've got to keep in mind, there were reports back in, I think it was February time, that there were reports or rumours that Tom Cleverley, Watford were thinking of sacking him. And the response from Watford fans was like, absolutely not. You cannot do this. Look at what he's doing this season. We appreciate Tom Cleverley. He's a favourite anyway for his playing days, but what he's done this season has been brilliant. And they just want a bit of consistency with who their manager is. So that got blew back, didn't happen. And now that it has happened, we're seeing the same blowback once again, Justin.
It's unsurprising, really. I think Watford fans are a very unique group in that the Potsos have almost bludgeoned Watford fans with the expectation that manager turnover, or fast manager turnover, or regular manager turnover, to actually describe it as, is a normal thing when it isn't. Don't get me wrong, the managerial life cycle of life, whatever, tenure at a football club is low. It's around 18 months on average. But Watford clearly considerably reduced that stat anyway because of the amount of managers they get through. But, from a Watford fan's perspective, Tom Cleverley has created a hell of a lot of unity at the football club, when actually, if there's a manager there not doing that, the criticism and discontent and, I wouldn't say potential for protest, because that's going to the extreme side of things, but fans would not be happy with the ownership if it wasn't for Tom Cleverley distracting them with relative success on the football pitch and creating that sense of unity at the football club. So from their point of view, from the fans' point of view, I really do feel for them, because there's a man there who has achieved a lot on the football pitch, but has also created a culture at the club that hasn't been there probably since prior to the Potsos came in, to be honest with you.
Yep, got a comment here from Alfie. Tom did everything for the club, but it's no shock he's been sacked. I think there'll be a lot of backlash now, and rightly so. Going off what you were just saying there, Justin, Tom Cleverley has almost single-handedly dragged Watford in the right direction, hasn't he? Because everything else about the club should indicate them going in the other direction, but he has got them into this position where they haven't been in danger of going down all season. And for many years, when the Potsos were going through periods of sacking managers every few months, Watford fans would often defend them. You'd find that being the case quite often, because they were still, fighting in the Premier League and bouncing between the Championship and Premier League. It was still working out for them. But patience has now run thin amongst Watford fans. They've had enough of this hiring and sacking thing that they've just been doing for so many years now. And it's gotten to the point where they want the Potsos out. We hear it all the time. There was I remember when Derby faced Watford at Pride Park earlier in this season, the Watford fans were singing, "We don't care about Gino. He doesn't care about me. All I care about is Tom Cleverley." Well, they can't sing that song anymore because he's gone. But that kind of gives an indicator of how the Watford fans are feeling about this and why they think this. For me, I think this is going to be the straw that breaks the camel's back for a lot of Watford fans, because I think many won their last straw anyway when it came to the Potsos, but this will probably tip a lot of people over the edge. So let's look at it now, Justin. Where do Watford go next? Where do you think they will be looking at next season now that they've sacked an incredibly talented manager like Tom Cleverley?
That is genuinely the hardest question to answer, because I don't know what goes through the hierarchy's head when it comes to a decision like this, because they've got rid of so many stable managers in the past, or managers that could have delivered something, and also, almost prematurely ended their tenures. I mean, Rob Edwards comes to mind. I know there'll be a lot of cynicism around that because of what he did with Luton this season, but generally he wasn't given the chance to do anything with Watford, and he left before, and then delivered success with Luton, getting them into the Premier League, and we've seen it time and time again before that. So for me, they'll probably just go back to the model that they used to going back to. They'll probably go for an Italian or Spanish manager. They'll dip into the market there. It'll be very agent-led, as it usually is. And he will be gone by October, November. And then we'll get a Chris Wilder type in, won't we? Nigel Pearson's available. He might go back to the football club. That we'll just enter that same cycle. So where do they go from here? We just go back into that cycle that we used to going into with Watford. They'll go and recruit a foreign manager. It won't work out. We'll go to an English manager. It won't work out. And then we'll go back and back again until the Pozzos sell the club.
Yeah, well, that's the only way I can, at this stage, see Watford going in the right direction again. Got a comment here from Sky Blue Rob who says, I hear Wayne Rooney's available. Wouldn't put it past Watford. But the thing is here, right? Watford, as we kept banging on about in the past 11 minutes or so, they were in serious danger of going down this season because of everything about the club not being right. Now they're in serious danger because they've lost the one thing that was pulling them in the right direction, and that was Tom Cleverley. So it's hard not to be fearful for them next season. Maybe towards the end of this season, we did start to see signs of the Watford team that many people were expecting this season, but ultimately they've comfortably stayed up, haven't they? So now it's very, very hard not to be fearful for Watford heading into next season and what could potentially be waiting for them. In terms of who the manager is they go for next, I don't really know. If you cast your mind back to when there were the rumours before about Tom Cleverley being sacked, there was a Spanish manager whose name escapes me. I think it was the Villarreal manager. I can't remember what it was off the top of my head. But it wouldn't surprise me if they ended up turning to him, because I did say at the time, it seems like there wouldn't be smoke without the fire in this kind of situation. So that won't surprise me. But then we'll probably end up in the same cycle, Justin, where he does well for a bit, then doesn't do so well, gets sacked, and then, hiring another manager every 3 months.
Well, this is it. They've been through so many managers since they bought the club, the Pozzos. And like I said earlier, that we've almost got used to this cycle, but it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's not been working since the mid-2010s. When the likes of Quique Sanchez Flores came in and left, and Javier Gracia came in and left. In fact, they've had 21 managers, or they sacked 21 managers since they took over, excluding caretakers. I'll tell you what, Ryan, I'll give you 60 seconds. Name as many as you can.
Oh, God, okay. Right. Tom Cleverley.
1.
Valerian Ismael.
2.
Sanchez Flores.
Yep.
Isco Munoz.
Yep.
Nigel Pearson.
Yep.
Claudio Ranieri.
Yep.
Roy Hodgson.
Yes.
Slaviša Jokanovic.
Yes.
Javi Gracia.
Yes.
Have I said Sanchez Flores?
He's 2 spells, so yes.
Oh, brilliant. Roy Hodgson. Have I said him?
You said Hodge.
Yeah.
30 more seconds.
Vladimir Ivic.
Correct.
Slaven Bilic.
Yes.
Chris Wilder.
Is another one.
Yeah. There was the Scottish chap, McKinley.
Yes, Billy McKinley.
Yes.
I'll give you 10 more seconds. Let's go.
I can't think of any more. You're going right to the start, aren't you? Zola, Gianfranco Zola.
Yes. Time's up.
Matt Sarri?
Yes.
Yes.
Matt Sarazzi, yeah. Matt Sarri, that's the one.
Yep. Who did I miss? I must have got pretty much everyone there, mustn't I?
Oscar Garcia. You missed Oscar Garcia.
I mix him up with Harry Grazia, that's why.
Grazia was in there. Giuseppe Sannino is one. The Billy McKinley shout is great because he only managed 2 games before he left.
Yeah, yeah. Anyone else?
I think you've nailed it. Obviously, Hayden Williams was caretaker. I did exclude caretakers, but he
Yeah.
had 2 spells as caretaker. Did you say Marco Silva? You did, didn't you?
No, I didn't actually. Marco Silva's one I missed out. Yeah, I should have said him. Forget about that. Flipping heck. God, how things change over the years. I'm pretty happy with that, actually. But the fact that we've just gone through so many managers there during the Potso's reign shows maybe it's time for a change of tap, lads. Because I don't really know what they're thinking now. Do they think Watford should be competing for the Premier League? Do you know what I mean? Because that's the only thing I can think of here, that they think this club should be fighting higher up the food chain. But why they think they're doing that while also putting in next to no money into the club is just bizarre.
Yeah, it's strange. It really is a strange methodology, strange strategy. I think if you look at the way things were when they first took over, there was let's say it was very agent led. There were player sharing amongst the clubs of Granada and Udinese, and it worked to an extent before they had to start turning over players a bit more regularly and investing a little bit more. But obviously, since 2000, I would say 2019, it just hasn't worked. Probably since Javier Grazia took them to the FA Cup final in 2019, it's just fallen off a cliff form wise. And that's why they've been through 10 managers since Nigel Pearson was sacked in 2020, for goodness sakes, 5 years ago. And so we can keep saying it. We're going to say the same thing every time a Watford manager comes up, mainly because they ultimately either choose the wrong candidate or they choose the right candidate and their tenure doesn't last as long as it should do. And like I said, it's not going to change until the Potsos ultimately sell the club, because that's their idea of success. They've not found success since, as I say, 2019. It's been 6 years of doing the same thing over and over again. It's not working, lads. It's not working.
Yeah,
Change.
and the other thing is, of course, you mentioned Udinese there, Justin. It's become pretty apparent that Watford aren't a priority in the Pozzo's eyes now. It's all seemingly centred around Udinese. A great example of that is this past season, Watford have spent around £2.5 million on transfers. Udinese looking more like £20 million. So it goes to show that this, this model of multi-club ownership just doesn't seem to be working now, particularly for Watford. And it also doesn't help that a lot of the players who do well at Watford seem to go to Udinese as well. So yeah, that's another thing that is, I know, really quite a sticking point for a lot of Watford fans. So yeah, very, very worrying for them in the near future. It'll be very interesting to see who they go for next. I suppose to kind of round off the chat though, Justin, we should have a chat about Tom Cleverley himself. Of course, as we've said repeatedly throughout this show, an unbelievable job he's done this season. I think during the last international break, I even went as far to say as him being the most exciting young English manager in the country. And now he's a free agent. So with that being said, what do you think is next for old Tommy Clevs?
I think whatever he does, he'll find success in it. I think he's that sort of manager. He's really switched on. His game plans this season were amongst the best in the division, which is why they were accumulating so many points at the start of the campaign. He was setting his teams up to counteract opposition strengths, and that's a sign of a very switched on, good coach when they can do that. Obviously, because coaching a style of play here in a team that probably isn't good enough to do it is a difficult thing to do. So he took it game by game, and he was a success. He's been linked with the likes of Norwich. I was obviously listening to the radio when the news was announced. I've heard conversations of Rangers, which, yes, the SPL is the SPL, but there's an opportunity to manage in Europe with that, which opens up a lot of doors if you can find success. So I think Tom Cleverley's got a very bright future. I think Watford are incredibly daft in allowing such a highly rated, gifted young manager leaving their doors for absolutely nothing. He could have been poached by a club. They could have got compensation and gone about it that way, but they didn't. They shot themselves in the foot, Ryan. Watford did.
Yeah, talk about not appreciating what you've got. It's a classic example of that, really. But yeah, I agree with everything you say there, Justin. I think a club is going to get Tom Cleverley more than likely this summer. I'd be surprised if he's out of a job for too long, and they will be getting a golden opportunity really to get this guy in, because what he's been able to do with the tools that he's got, of course, not a squad with a huge amount of money, mostly young players. is ridiculous. So if he goes to a club who probably have more ambition about them, probably have more resources available to him, they could really reap the benefits of and capitalise on Watford's stupidness in getting rid of this incredibly young, talented manager. So I'm excited to see where he goes next. I don't think his stock has taken any slight damage at all from what's happened in the past 6 months, particularly not what's happened today. So with that being said, I think he's still got a very bright career ahead of him. We'll finish off with a poll, Justin. We put the question out to our viewers on YouTube. Were Watford right to sack Tom Cleverley? Justin, are you saying yes or no?
Oh, definitely, yeah. Of course not. They were daft. They were stupid. They were fools.
87% said no, 13% said yes. I would like to have a good sit down with those 13% who said yes, because
Gianluca Nani.
Yeah, he's gone. Right, everyone log in now and vote on this poll. Yeah, that's the only explanation I can think of for that, because otherwise I don't get what people are thinking. But anyway, ladies and gents, this has been our live reaction straight off the back of the news that Tom Cleverley has been sacked by Watford. And we'll be back again tomorrow with the second tier awards, like we initially planned, but then Watford decided to be trigger happy once again. But there we go. This has been the second tier podcast. I've been Ryan Dilks.
I've been Justin Peach.
And a big thank you for listening.